Welcome to the Practice Podcast, a show created by lawyers to help lawyers in life and business without all the complicated lawyer language. Let's welcome Bast Amron founders and your hosts, Jeff Bast and Brett Amron.
Yo, what's up? Wow, Christina's literally pulling the headset off her ears. I didn't know you went that high, Brett. Very impressive.
Acapella.
We are just today introducing a recording from our eighth annual. We are introducing, that's exactly what we're doing. We're introducing this. The following message has been brought to you by Bast Amron. This is a recording from our 8th annual Business Advantage Forum.
I heard it was great.
I was there and I can attest to it.
I unfortunately was not.
And
I got dragged away. They wouldn't let me in.
I'm still sad about it.
Yeah.
The forum, this is our 8th time doing it. That's why we call it 8th annual. It was April 22nd, 2026. We use it as a fundraiser. We raise money for Dade Legal Aid, and we've raised over $6,000 this year. We do a different organization each year. And the panel, what you're about to hear.
You missed the honor. I mean, you.
We were honoring Earth Day. It was April 22nd. Thank you. Good point. Excellent. Yeah, I agree. You're right.
You're the environmentalist.
And the panel that you're about to hear was called Leading Through Disruption, AI, Innovation, and the Future of Work. And
I heard it was an amazing panel.
It really was awesome.
That's what I heard.
And I'll tell you, I've listened to a lot of AI panels, and I thought this was the best. And I continue to hear from people who were there. In fact, just yesterday, I had a conversation with someone, and they were telling me how there were so many practical takeaways. So this panel focused on how leaders across industries successfully guide their organizations through this incredibly rapid transformation. They talked about how AI and the workforce evolution and shifting customer expectations are redefining how we operate and deliver value. And they're just full of insights on fostering a culture of innovation, strengthening talent engagement, protecting data, all while keeping leadership human-centered and adaptable. So enjoy.
That was very fluid. I look forward to listening.
All right, everyone. We're here for our second panel now. The topic of the panel is Leading Through Disruption, AI, Innovation, and the Future of Work. So the focus of this panel is going to be on how leaders across industries can successfully guide their organizations through rapid transformation. We are going to explore how AI, workforce evolution, and shifting customer expectations are redefining how companies operate and deliver value. And the goal is to provide insight on fostering a culture of innovation, strengthening talent engagement, and keeping leadership human-centered and adaptable. And we have a really fantastic group of speakers today, beginning with Glory. Glory Alcantara is the Director of Multicultural Marketing at General Mills. Glory is a highly accomplished international marketing leader with 18 years of diverse experience, renowned for her success in building new businesses, launching brands in diverse markets, driving impactful brand campaigns, and effectively leading teams through change. She began her career at General Mills in brand management, a foundation that has propelled her through a host of diverse roles within the company. As Director of Multicultural Marketing and Growth Initiatives at General Mills North America, Glory is at the forefront of developing and executing marketing strategies that deeply resonate with diverse consumer segments. Her work fosters inclusive and engaging brand experiences across General Mills' entire $10 billion portfolio of brands, including iconic household staples like Cheerios, Pillsbury, and Nature Valley. Prior to her current role, Glory spent several years leading the marketing organization for General Mills Latin America, where she successfully navigated and influenced markets across more than 20 countries. Glory's journey is marked by a global perspective, having moved to the United States from the Dominican Republic at age 17 to pursue higher education. She earned her bachelor's degree in business administration from Silver Lake College in Wisconsin, and after gaining valuable experience working at Kimberly-Clark post-graduation, she furthered her education, completing an MBA with a major in marketing and a minor in strategy at Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. Her rich international background includes living in the Dominican Republic and various states across the United States, including Wisconsin, Indiana, Minnesota, and Florida. She's a native Spanish speaker, fluent in English, and conversational in Portuguese. Welcome, Glory.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
On the far left side of the stage, my left, We have Chad Volkert. He's global head of legal consulting at Protiviti. Chad assists growing companies and law firms in scaling smarter, moving faster, and innovating to drive profitability. With more than 25 years of executive leadership experience, Chad has built and led high-performing teams across sales operations, legal, technology, marketing, and finance, overseeing organizations with more than 30 offices and more than 2,000 professionals. During his tenure at Robert Half and Protiviti, Chad launched and scaled multiple business units, delivering double-digit growth and establishing market-leading positions. His focus is clear: solving complex growth challenges through strategic clarity, AI-driven innovation, operational excellence, and inspired leadership. A trusted advisor, Chad combines deep business and legal insight with a practical, results-oriented approach. Clients turn to him when they are ready to move from good to great, whether entering new markets, leveraging AI to transform operations, or cultivating cultures that attract and retain top talent. Outside of his professional work, Chad's a devoted husband and father, an active member of his church, and a community leader serving as an elected city councilman in Sea Ranch Lakes. He enjoys staying active through tennis, golf, and skiing, and can often be found reading several books at once, just like Jeff Bast. And finally, we have Jeff Evans. Jeff is the president of Volta Global. Jeff has over 15 years of experience as an investor, operator, and entrepreneur. As the president of Volta Global, Jeff is responsible for strategy and execution of the firm's activities globally, overseeing all investment, financing, and operations activities. Jeff also serves as the president of the One Box Group and was instrumental in the creation of the strategy and growth of Volta Global's European self-storage platform from a small 2-site portfolio in 2019 to what is currently a pan-European platform with over 1 million net rentable square feet and more than 40 employees in just 3 years. Prior to Volta Global, Jeff worked closely with the chairman of Volta Global, managing several $100 million of investments in both public and private markets. Jeff spent the earlier part of his career on Wall Street covering global emerging markets and technology, first in investment banking, and then as the lead investment analyst for a long-short hedge fund that grew from $20 million assets under management to over $1 billion in 3 years. In addition to that investment experience, Jeff was a co-founder and executive officer of a venture-backed educational technology company, where he oversaw the company's early growth to a $35 million business with customers in over 100 countries before exiting the business in 2011. Jeff is a Yale MBA and also holds an undergraduate degree from Syracuse University. He's on the board of directors of Sentinel Systems, Simple Storage Mexico, One Box Netherlands, and One Box France. And outside of work, Jeff is an avid reader, another tennis player, and a hiker, and he loves spending time with his wife and their 3 young children. Welcome, Jeff. So we're here to talk about AI, but of course you cannot mandate innovation, but you can create conditions for it. So what have each of you done inside your organizations to make people feel safe enough to experiment, and what actually moved the needle? And Glory, if we could start with you.
Sure. So General Mills has a long history, obviously, of innovation. Hopefully, many of you know our products and buy them, hopefully. But I think it starts really with generating a place where people feel psychologically safe to make mistakes. We have very intentional places where we have created moments where people come together to ideate and test new ideas. One of those things I would say as an example is like we do growth labs where you have multifunctional teams coming together to ideate on how do we solve problems today in a very unique way. You come up with the idea, you sell it upwards and to leadership and get approvals, you do it, and if it doesn't work out, it's okay. You're not gonna get fired. So we keep promoting that place where you come in, you get together, you build ideas, you execute them, and then you learn from them. We stop calling things mistakes and we call them learnings. And then we give visibility to all of that. We used to be a company where we only talked about the wins. And then now you even hear our CEO, Jeff Harmening, talk a lot about the wins and the learnings. What things did we do well? But most importantly, or equally important, what things did we learn that can feed the future of our thinking and our innovation? So for us, starts with psychological safety, promoting a place where creativity is encouraged, and letting people fail safely.
That's excellent. I like the continuity with the first panel as well about the power of language and just reframing a mistake as a learning is something powerful. Jeff?
Yeah, I think the learning aspect that Glory mentions is super important. For us, we had a bit of a leg up in terms of getting adoption, at least internally, from the culture and the core DNA of the company, which is built around hiring people with intellectual curiosity, that have an owner's mindset, and that are high agency by nature. Those three values start in the recruiting and are things that we emphasize and train once they get into the company as well. And for people that have those three skills and personality traits, you really don't need to push those people too hard to adopt new tools and to want to experiment and try new things. So for us, while the safety aspect is certainly important, and we encourage people to experiment and not worry about failing, it's equally important, I think, to make sure the standards are set high enough that people really strive to do something useful with this technology. And so we tell people, obviously, that it's okay to experiment, it's okay to fail, but the expectation is not just that you're experimenting, that you're building something that truly has tangible value to the organization, that there's a direct business outcome and a measurable output for the business in whatever you are building and using AI for. And I think holding that standard and that accountability high while also balancing it with the safety and the acceptance of failure has been really instrumental for us in terms of getting adoption, and more importantly, getting adoption that actually is creating real business value and business outcomes.
That's excellent. You're really building the conditions for it from day one just by focusing like you said, on those three characteristics: the intellectual curiosity, agency, and the owner's mindset.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting piece for us has been, before we even did a firm-wide policy towards using AI, we already had probably 2/3 of the firm using it personally. And so the transition was really, take what you're doing personally, integrate it into what the company needs and the context that you can drive from the company to really enhance what you're already doing. So it wasn't so much an adoption curve or adoption challenge. It was really setting the right context and setting the standards and goals for them to use it in the right way.
Right. Yeah, and presumably they're doing it better than I am, which is just using it as a glorified search engine.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other piece, is if you don't set that standard, that's where people usually end up, because that's the lowest barrier to entry to using it. And
right.
If people don't know what they should be using it for or what the expectation is, they think they're doing the right thing just by having Claude beat Google instead.
Right, which it does very well. Chad?
I think it's a great question and a great place to start. I think a lot of people view AI as a technology problem. It's really not. It's an operational, a trust and accountability problem. And so we come from a little bit of a different perspective. We're a global consulting firm with 12,000 consultants plus in 26 countries. So a lot of people turn to us thinking we're having all the answers. And as leaders within that field, we have to say, no, we don't have all the answers in AI. And the great leaders of organizations are being very transparent with their employees on the journey of AI, right? Far too many leaders in the early days and still to this day right now are creating some AI strategies over in a corner. You have hundreds, if not thousands, of employees wondering, what are they doing? And is it going to take my job? And so as a leader, I think providing that transparency early and often so you can build trust within the organization, exactly what Jeff and Glory were talking about as well, about the innovation, the ability to get out there and try things, adopt and be trained in those AI tools, but understanding exactly where the company is going in their AI journey is really, really important. I looked at our numbers yesterday. We're supporting over 5,700 companies right now around the globe with some form of AI implementation, optimization. And most of that starts with assessing not the technology, but assessing leadership and the roadmap that they are providing currently to their employees on the AI journey.
That's great. And Jeff and I were actually just talking about this before the panel, this fear amongst people of, is it going to take my job?
Yeah.
And I think for most people, the reality is that it's not going to take your job, but if you don't learn to use it, you might lose your job at some point because the rest of the organization moves ahead without you and you're just a lagging piece. All right, so let's move on to talking about AI and automation. So AI and automation are moving faster than most organizations anticipated. So honestly, how prepared do you feel your organization was when the disruption of AI started hitting? And what do you wish you had done sooner? And Jeff, you want to start?
Sure. I think the speed at which the tools and the myriad of applications built on top of those tools are evolving probably makes it hard for any of us to say we were fully prepared. Yeah. Like I mentioned, the cultural values and the people that we have in the company certainly helped with adoption. The thing that I think we could have done a better job of in hindsight and wish we would have done sooner is prevent it from being a piecemeal approach across the firm. We were really very proactive about encouraging experimentation and offering people 10 or 15 different tools that they could start to use to help in their work streams. And I think what we found was the usage, vanity metrics of how people were using it were off the charts and looked great, but it started to create a risk of there being almost a two-tiered set of users at the firm. We had some power users that were really knowledgeable, really developing amazing applications and 10xing their own work streams. And then you had another set of users that kind of never really figured out how to use it appropriately and were falling behind. And that's not what you want in an organization. And so if we were going to do it all over again, I think we would have spent the time up front to make it more of a platform that we offer. So really, one model, one toolkit, a curated set of plugins or skills, and some sample use cases by each functional department in the company. And I think if you offer people that and they plug into that, it's a very different experience than just saying, here's, an a la carte menu of different AI tools you could use in the company. So, maybe this is helpful for people who haven't started on the journey yet, or maybe people made the same mistake we did, but that's something I would have really spent the time up front to do, and I think it would have created a lot more immediate impact from day one.
Right. Yeah, I guess as an early adopter, sometimes you really don't have an option but to just grope around in the dark. Yeah. But now with the benefit of hindsight, and for someone who's a little bit behind the curve, they can take advantage of what you just said.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's going to be true for most organizations that use AI to separate themselves. They'll use that model of it where there's an existing infrastructure that people plug into, both existing hires and new hires, rather than just kind of having this patchwork option of tools people can use and then trusting that they'll use it the right way. But the organizations that really develop that centralized toolkit and context, I think, will be the ones that create the gap versus competition.
Chad?
I would say, right now it's sort of like a fire hose of AI information coming at us, the various tools, how rapidly they're changing. And if I think back to the early days at Protiviti, as we were thinking about AI, we immediately jumped into building technology first, black boxes to make sure all of our content was secure internally, but we could still provide great advisory services to our clients. How do you do that? And then fast forward, you start working with clients, and they all were on that same journey of, well, what technology is best? What AI should I be using? Should I be using this? How do I embed it? And they were well ahead of the curve as we were, not thinking about the people, the process, the workflows, and the problems that you're trying to solve. And so if I had to do it all over again, and now as we advise our clients, pick one or two of the key things. Do a design thinking session with the executive leadership team or an area of the law firm or the corporation. Come down to a couple of key business needs that if you could accelerate, you're going to get exponential growth and or efficiencies, or in a wonderful world, both. And then jump into that, commit to that, build the processes around that, and then fill in the AI and the technology tools that are going to allow you to accelerate in that area. I see far too many leaders thinking about AI of how do I use technology to drive bottom line profitability by removing staff or the need to hire. The real way I believe you need to be looking at it is, if I'm a leader, how do I use the process and the procedures of whatever I'm doing? If I'm a lawyer, I'm making wonderful food or in the financial services space. How do I do that better to allow exponential growth with AI so I'm growing top line, bottom line, and maybe not having to hire as many people or hiring a different type of a person? And then the final piece of all of that is, in a rear view mirror, you need to work with your employees to upskill them now and in the future, right? A lot of people started with technology and they forgot about their people and the process.
Yeah, I like that idea of making your organization more capable to accomplish more rather than do what you're doing now with less.
Exactly.
Right, it's sort of a backwards way of thinking to approach it that way. Gloria, is there anything you wanted to add to this one?
I think that was very complete.
I have a good question for you, Gloria.
Awesome.
So, digital transformation can start to feel very transactional. How do you make sure the human side of leadership doesn't get lost when the focus is on tools, systems, and efficiency?
It's a great question, and one that you touched on a little bit to Chad. I think for us, there's definitely a place for technology, and we look at AI as a co-pilot, no pun intended, on the tool that exists out there. But it's really a co-pilot to help us enhance and maybe do more of what we are trying to eliminate. So, for example, repetitive tasks that take a lot of time. How do you make AI help you with that while you free up time of your talent to do the creative thinking, the problem solving that you really need them to spend time on, and the leading that they need to do and the thinking ahead? So it's leveraging the tool to replace those tasks that don't need the human factor, but really saving the minds and the power of the human talent to really ensure that the things that need the critical thinking, the things that need the nuance, problem solving are there. So it's never going to replace the human mind, but it should be enhancing the things that are not needed. I think for me specifically, I spend, for example, a ton of time building PowerPoint presentations. We do a lot of that, and I'm sure you guys can relate to, some of you can relate to that. And it's crazy how much time I have spent in my career as a marketer building pretty decks so I can sell the ideas up to leadership, which is critical. You have to sell to influence. But now you have AI who is taking a lot of that time and effort that I used to invest, building a deck, making my font pretty, making all the things that I needed to do in order to make it meaningful. Now AI can do that for me while I can focus on what is the best way I can position this idea to get the buyout that I need, to get the alignment that I need. So now my time is spent thinking, is spent communicating versus building something that a tool can really do for me.
Yeah, making you far more efficient and
more valuable
conveying your
too.
message, right?
Yeah.
Chad?
When you look at the digital aspect and you think about the efficiencies that AI can create, again, how do you train your teams to use that AI effectively to gain more valuable hours back, right? AI is not going to take away the senior level advisory work. It's not going to take away the balancing of competing ideas, and certainly not going to take away the human touch of decision making that you all need to make on an ongoing basis. But it can certainly streamline and drive the efficiencies at work. And so, again, that's a transparent communication with your employees about why you're bringing certain AI to bear for them and what that means on how you can help accelerate their career, advance the business objectives of your organization more effectively. But again, that needs to be mapped out, needs to be a strategy, needs to be thoughtful in how you approach that. And if you do, you can drive some amazing results.
Yeah, that idea, again, of just sort of accelerating people's careers rather than replacing them or cutting them out is, I think, a sort of powerful reframing of what we can do with AI. So roles are changing, some are disappearing, and new ones are being created faster than companies can hire for them. How are you thinking about your people in the middle of all of that? And what does upskilling actually look like in practice? Jeff, can you lead us off?
Sure, yeah. I mean, right now, our company is maybe a little unique in terms of the fact that we've always run it extremely lean and flat. And I think that's relevant now because if there's any large organizational structure impact that I think AI will really have in the next 3 to 4 years, it's on making every organization flatter and leaner. The two kind of core areas that I think AI will really eat rapidly within companies is the support roles, so research, data, and then anything that's that kind of process-dependent middle layer where you have whole chains of people in an org structure that are tasked with just executing processes all the way down, which now, AI really obviates the need for a lot of that. And so I think we're actually in a good position where we are in terms of where org structures are headed in a post-AI world, because we've always run this lean operation, and we have 15 people in HQ managing, $500 million in AUM across operational real estate. People in our company today, we like to use this analogy that's obviously not perfect, but we tell them that this is special forces, not the army. And so everybody, even if you have one core primary specialty, you're still expected to have secondary or even tertiary cross-functional skills. So, an investment manager covering our retail portfolio is expected to still know enough about leasing and asset management to be very useful in the process there. And even though we have a dedicated asset manager person, there's this cross-functional, redundancy that eliminates the need for redundant roles. But what AI really helps, and going back to the idea of making people more capable, not just more efficient, is it really helps those people with that cross-functional skill set. So, instead of having to go back to school or to spend 5 years getting up to speed on what's involved in asset management, the investment professional using AI in the right way and maybe even having agentic tools at his disposal for asset management really can make that secondary capability much stronger than they otherwise would have. And so I think you're going to see that trend towards leaner, flatter organizations. And the one role that I think a lot of organizations are underestimating the need for, but that I think is going to start becoming more and more critical going forward, is an internal AI orchestrator. So somebody who is systems-oriented, moderately technical, and knows these tools extremely well, that can really be the bridge, to owning internal AI adoption, making sure the context and the data inside the business is shared across to get the best use out of these tools. I think that is a new role that you're going to start seeing more and more of, and probably every organization eventually will need to have some, either someone existing or someone new owning that role going forward.
I have a follow-up question about something you said about support roles becoming redundant. Sure. But first, I want to hear what Glory has to say on the original question.
Yeah, I love the AI orchestrator role. I think you're right. And I'm actually we need that right now in my organization. So I'm going to bring that back. Thank you. I think for us, as the workplace is changing so rapidly, we have taken this as an opportunity to really invest in upskilling and reskilling our people. I think it's both. I think there are some things that need to be unlearned and relearned, and some things that need to be just elevated in terms of the knowledge and the ability for us to execute these tools. For us, we've done it a couple ways. One, I think Chad talked a little bit about it, is from a leadership standpoint, how are we modeling the behavior that we want others to follow? That's one on that. And how do we embrace change? We had a lot of change management training happening to get us ready mentally for this. It's a big change, and as any change is difficult. We like what we like, and we get used to things, and then when things change, it becomes hard, and we're trying to make something happen and win in the marketplace. You cannot be bogged down on your mindset. You have to get your mindset right first. So that was the first and foremost, and then we invested in tools, processes, because we had the people aspect covered. So it's people, tools, and processes that we invested a lot of time in, and then we've deployed what we called, I'm going to call it AI schools, for a lack of a better term, but it's basically courses, because we have a very large org, and you have 30,000 some people across the globe all trying to learn this together. Some people are here in the journey, some people are here, and a lot of us in the middle trying to figure it out. And we needed some kind of systematic approach to learning these tools, applying them to our day-to-day job in a way that felt natural to the work we were each doing, because you have people in operations, in marketing, and design, many, many different roles across the org. So we created these courses to let people know, depending on where they are in the journey, AI literacy, from how do you solve a complex problem with a tool that we've created for ourselves. So that is kind of how we've been doing that. And that has taken, it's going to take a long time, I'm sure, but the people have been very appreciative of the intentionality that has gone behind the creation of these tools and these courses, and the ability to let people kind of swim in the waters and having some guiding principles around, but letting them kind of discover on their own too, and giving them freedom to discover the tools, to play with them, and apply them to their specific problems that they're trying to solve in their specific units, business units.
Yeah, that's really excellent to have a sort of formal process available for people to learn within your organization.
The downside to that is that you can get overly invested in process and following process, and then you don't advance as fast. So that's always the balance too. But yes, for sure, it's important.
Was there anything you wanted to add on this one, Chad?
You know, what's interesting is as we talk about this, we haven't really brought up the keyword disruption, right? There is this disruption that people feel AI is changing the world or going to displace all of these individuals. I think about the litigators in the room, George, one of the foremost e-discovery experts. Remember 2006 when the federal rules changed in e-discovery and, it was going to wipe out a whole area of law and, all of a sudden the computers and the relativity software, you'd never need another lawyer, right? Well, the reality is the same things are being said about AI right now in many ways. And to Jeff's point and Glory's point, the ability to upskill yourself and become an AI expert, whatever that may mean within your organization, how to prompt effectively, being an AI agent builder for your company, being this champion internally, those are going to be the people that are going to excel and fill in brand new roles that don't even exist. That Glory's going to go and hire right now, right? A brand new role. And so just like any other disruption, especially within the technology space for the workforce, sure, there will be jobs that will be gone, but there will be many, many more created in how to use AI and the agents effectively going forward.
And this follows up on something Jeff said, because I think the law is an area where this is true, and I think it's probably true as well in your business, Jeff, where a lot of times the people who are in the support roles, and I think for you that means, I think you said people doing research and analysis, and then in the law, it's often our junior associates. Those are, I think you said that potentially those research and analysis roles become redundant at some point because the AI tools might sort of replace or supplement the ability of people to do them without actually having a dedicated person for that. And my view generally is that I think anyone who's presently got the job, if they're already one of your junior financial analysts or they're already an associate in a law firm, they're probably safe. But what I worry about is continuity of the business in the future when we don't need as many junior associates and we don't need as many financial analysts, but then who's feeding the business and creating, the more mature professionals down the line? Is that something you've thought about?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, in an ideal world, our junior people today learn to embrace and use these tools where they basically can do what would naturally be the next progression for them at a much earlier point in their career. And so if we take our business, for example, in our private equity business, a huge portion of what we used to need very junior people for was the sourcing and the initial research phase. All right, that's something that with AI tools and capabilities today, so much of the sourcing can become automated. The contact lists, the industry list, industry mapping, all these things that used to take a junior analyst, days or a week to do are now done in minutes. And so that's only one piece of it, right? There's a whole chain in the process for finding and acquiring a business, but there's a huge part of that initial research phase that somebody used to have to do manually. Somebody used to have to scrape, industry websites, find owner contact information, reach out to the owners, set up meetings for myself or another investment professional to take. All of that these days can be 100% automated. Now, that doesn't mean this junior person that's there today is gone tomorrow. That's not how we think about it. But we think about, can this person, if all that work can be automated and done in minutes instead of weeks, can this person do the next level up, which is taking those initial calls with sellers, vetting the business, analyzing the business the way, a VP level person would be able to do. And if they can, then there's obviously a role for it, because if we can now scan and find 50 targets in 3 days instead of 3 months, of course, there's a bigger universe of companies for us to discover and acquire. And it's really just a matter of, can that person kind of upskill themselves to prove that they still add value in the organization?
But as that current generation of young financial analysts matures, do you think you'll need the same number of them, of new ones in the future?
No, I mean, we won't. Yeah, I think new hiring is where we'll see the biggest impact, at least in our business. I mean, investment management, private equity, is a very apprenticeship oriented business. There was always a pretty clear path. You start as an intern, you become an analyst, associate, VP, managing director. My view on, leaner and flatter, I think we'll have fewer people than we otherwise would. If we buy 10 times the number of companies this year than we did last year, we won't add 10 times the people. I can tell you that for sure. So leaner, flatter, more capable, I think is going to be the trend across most businesses that embrace these tools.
All right, so adopting AI responsibly is easy to say. It's hard to do. What does that actually mean for your organization, and how are you thinking about data, privacy, and the risks that come with moving fast?
Internally, we have a key AI governance playbook, and that's what we talk with our clients about. Again, as part of those workflows that I had mentioned earlier, I could have gone into greater detail at that point around the need for AI governance and privacy and setting your frameworks within your organization on how to protect your data and what are sort of the trigger points across the organization and protecting the processes of AI that you're using from outside information and your own internal information. I mean, the reality of the situation is if you do not have those policies in place, not only will it affect your data going outside of your four walls potentially or bad actors getting in, but also simply your employees. What is that AI protocol that your employees have to follow? Is that written? Is it followed up on? And are you building a program of training your employees around the various technology and governance aspects of it, right? I think we all need to remember we're in a world where you could start a business, call it 10 years ago, and have fairly protected sort of, proprietary go-to-market for 5-10 years, right? Literally, you can copycat a business with AI and very few people within 7 days. Forget about years. You're talking days and months. Michael Bickoff, who's the CIO of Nova and a serial entrepreneur, I heard him speak at a Prime Pulse event up in Fort Lauderdale a couple of weeks ago. He said it's attention, capital, competition. All can happen within weeks, meaning you have a great business idea internally that might be proprietary or an external business idea. If that word gets out, attention immediately circles that. Capital says, that's a pretty darn good idea. And with AI agents and a limited workforce and capital raise, we can copy it. And then your competition flows into the market much faster. So it starts with AI governance. How do you protect your data? How do you protect your processes as you go to market and whatever you are producing or in the business world around?
Yeah, it's kind of a scary idea that, as you said, Jack, you might have invested quite a bit of capital to develop this business and expecting or hoping that you'd have at least a few years to run it before you've got competition. And nowadays, weeks or months later, or months or weeks.
Right.
Wow.
And I think another job that's if it's not there already, is people who are scouting all the different tools that are out there to see what ideas are coming out, because people are going to be utilizing these tools and they're going to be leaking information that they shouldn't. So there's going to be people who are going to be, their sole job is going to be find out what, P&G is doing in their innovation plans. And they're going to be doing that in order to feed that into the, Intel. So I do think that's also a big issue that a lot of us are concerned with.
And I know Jeff doesn't want our phones out, but at break, take your phone out, go to whatever AI apps you have on your phone, and go into privacy settings and make sure that it's slid over that you're not teaching the AI. And they use funny words to try to make sure you don't slide that over, but make sure it's over and into your privacy settings, let alone the business world. So
yes,
right. Absolutely. All right, so disruption creates anxiety at every level of an organization. What does it actually look like to lead through that? And how do you keep people steady when you don't have all the answers yourself? Glory?
I'll go back to something Chad said earlier, because we talked a little about that before we came up here. And it's being transparent. I think it's being very honest and transparent with the organization in terms of where you are in the journey of AI adaptation and what's the roadmap to getting there. What are the things that you're going to give people in bite size that are going to get them there versus throwing everything at them at once? You have very hefty goals. We have very hard growth goals that we have to hit. You cannot keep your eye off that ball while you're learning all these new things. So you got to bring people along the journey in a way that feels conscientious to where they are in the journey, but also very intentional as you bring them on board. We release new tools all the time internally. Data privacy is a big thing, but we have people in place who are there to help bring that along versus just releasing everything at once and giving people that ability to learn while doing their job, because they still have a lot of stuff that they need to do. But now is how do you incorporate these tools and make them more agile, but the quality of the output needs to be still there. So, yeah.
I love that. And I think Glory's point on transparency and communication, super critical. I think the other thing I would add that I feel is pretty important is how you connect, where you're going with AI to the mission and purpose of the business. Mm-hmm. People like to work at a place usually not just to make money, but because there's some overarching mission or purpose for the business to exist. And I think a lot of times with AI, people don't always connect that to the mission. If you're a consumer-facing company, how is AI improving life for your customers? That's the piece that I think is really important, is to make that connection that people can see. This is why we're using it, and this is how it serves what I do every day.
I want to have a few minutes of Q&A. We're running out of time, so I'm going to jump to one last question. If you are talking to a leader who knows that they need to move on this AI thing and innovation, but doesn't know where to start, what do you tell them?
I think for me, it's probably a 4-point plan, and I'll try to keep it really brief. But point 1 would be own learning and committing to doing it yourself. Make it visible that you're in these tools, you're building. Let the company see that you're actually an active participant. I think this is a really hard transformation to lead from the sidelines. It's much better, gives people a lot more comfort and confidence in the purpose of this if they see you being an actual builder and user of the tools yourself. Number 2, I think, would be very intentional and explicit about the business goals. So not just AI goals, not 100% of people should be using AI every day. That's a metric that I think doesn't really do much in the long run, but being very clear about what the AI helps in terms of achieving the goals of the overall business. Mm-hmm. A lot of those goals are probably already in place, and usually AI is a way to get there faster or more efficiently. Number 3 would be what I mentioned earlier about when you're going to launch this or roll it out across the firm, have that operational system, that platform in place, not just the a la carte menu of tools. And then lastly, I would say hire or find that internal AI orchestrator. I genuinely think that is going to be a very significant and impactful role, and that everybody's going to want one and have one soon. So the earlier you can find yours, the better you'll be.
Right, and that might be hiring someone specifically, or just sort of someone might just sort of rise to the occasion within the organization.
Yeah, I mean, in our case, it was somebody that we hired not because of their AI chops, but because they were extremely intelligent and good at what we hired them to do. And they just happened to be a super early adopter of AI that was technical and was a systems-based thinker. And those 3 things allowed them to be the internal AI champion and really be effective at it.
Great.
I would say the first thing to the leader is you're not alone, and there is nobody at the finish line, right? There is nobody that has all the answers within AI, but if you haven't started on the journey, you need to start now. And so the best way to start now is find that number 1 or 2 sort of rubrics that you want to accomplish based on your business needs. That may be P&L, that may be client related, that may be employee related. Find those, dedicate yourself to those, and build a plan around how to execute on that, and then bring in the right AI. Don't just throw the kitchen sink at it. A lot of companies are doing that. You've heard from Jeff and Glory as well, way too many AI tools out there and nobody's a master of any of them, right? And so nothing's getting done. So pick it and move now. But don't worry, there's plenty of people on the journey and you're just gonna always be on the journey. You can catch up very, very quickly in this world of AI.
Gloria, is there anything you want to add on this one?
I'll add my perspective. So I would say 3 things. First, and it's similar to what you both said already, but identify one problem today that you need help with, whatever that is. In my case, for example, is faster at PowerPoint presentations, right? Then find one tool out of the thousands that are probably out there that can solve that problem today. Find one and just try it out. Sometimes half the battle is just picking a tool and trying it out. Maybe that's not the best tool, but at least you started somewhere. Then get really good at prompting. I think this is very understated sometimes. We all get told prompting is, the input is what gives you the output, but we don't spend enough time understanding what does a good prompt looks like. So study prompting. Understand what good prompts looks like, because that's gonna give you the best output back from the tool. And then I would say fourth, teach others. So if you figure out a way how to solve a problem that you know others have too in the org. So if you have a problem, chances are others are dealing with the same thing. Go tell them and say, hey, you might want to try this tool that I tried, or this prompt unlocked a new thing for me. Check it out. And that's how I think you can expand the knowledge too in a faster way while we're trying ourselves to figure it out.
Yeah, it seems like sort of banking your prompts and sharing them within the organization is huge.
Saving them, banking them, sharing them, yes. Right. And optimizing as you discover new things.
Right, because other people can add to them, change them, make them better.
Yeah.
And you all gain from it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of that, that central toolkit or platform that I think has to be how you roll it out. You're 100% correct. We've found, people might borrow from an existing skill that somebody else at the firm built, and they would have never thought of it or come up with it, but now they use it in their workflow and makes them, 5 times more efficient. So that you have to have a way to share that context across the organization and let people learn from each other.
Awesome. So I'm sure there are some questions out there.
Hi, Mitch Bierman with Weiss Serota. I'm curious, as a provider of legal services to companies like yours that consume legal services, if you have any specific expectations with respect to the legal services that you receive in the use of AI.
I can give one example. We're working with a well-known law firm that'll remain unknown at this meeting, but they had an email come in from one of their top 5 clients globally that said, you will no longer send us any invoices for summarizing and redlining depositions, as we know that there are AI tools that can do that more effectively than your $390 an hour associates. So they called me, managing partner directly called me on the cell phone and said, how do I respond to this, right? So to your question, there are these demands being put on. In particular, we see across professional services, some of the things Jeff was talking about at sort of the support level roles, the research, the summary. We even see it at Protiviti, right? At Protiviti, we obviously have a lot of 20-something recent grads that historically have come in as consultants doing X. Well, now X can be done by some AI platform. So what do you have those individuals do? And that gets back to some of the discussion we're having about how do you build your future pipeline. But the reality of the situation is we see continued pressure being put on the system within legal, within accounting, within other areas of professional services, saying we no longer want to have work done the same way. And I would just recommend for the legal lawyers in the room or anyone in that type of a position, you need to be thinking about all of the alternative ways to deliver services and your expertise and be very, very creative. The ones that are being creative right now are winning the day as they talk with their clients.
My response to the first question was going to be a little tongue-in-cheek, but it was going to be, stop billing me the same hourly rates for things that I know you're using AI for. That's an interesting question, and we've certainly moved towards more fixed fee structures than we had in the past. And yeah, I think that's actually been the preferred way for us to work always. It was always something that we got a lot of pushback from our legal service providers, but that's how we view these projects. We have a diligence, we know what the data room looks like, we know what the size of the acquisition is. We'd like to price the fixed fee based on how much value is in the acquisition. And so I think, yes, speaking from the commercial real estate and private equity perspective, I would like my legal partners to be moving towards more fixed fee structures. Yeah.
Hi. I'm curious, as an attorney who spends most of my days investigating wrongdoings within companies, what are red flag uses of AI within your organizations, or are there any red flag uses?
I think for us, it's mainly data security. That goes back to the very first topic we had, which was, you experiment freely, but have to have some learnings in there. And I think if you're not careful about putting the safeguards up about your data from the beginning, one of the learnings you'll have is, oh no, Claude now knows everything that we've bought and done on the investment side for the last 3 years. So yeah, red flag for us really it revolves around data security, data privacy, and that's one great task for your internal AI orchestrator to figure out.
I'd say that, and for us too, is there's a lot of biases that's out there. So especially if you're incorporating consumer perspectives into something or creating an idea that embeds consumer viewpoints, there are a lot of biases out there. So having that person, making sure that the human that's working on it, is overlaying their critical thinking nuance on that, so that you eliminate the biases in some of these concepts is really important.
I would agree with that, because you can begin to train AI, and if you have a bad actor within an organization, they can begin to train the tools to give an output to senior leadership in the way they want to frame it, but disguise it nowadays, saying it's coming in from another channel. So I definitely agree with that. The other thing I would say is, if you haven't read up on Mythos, please do so. That was released to 20 of the largest organizations 2 weeks ago. That can teach itself to go after your data in a very, very negative way, right? And so it is and we're working with a lot of those companies right now on how to actually use Mythos or prevent it from going after your data and using it as a bad actor, right? Literally, that being the bad actor that you're trying to find is no longer a human, it's the agent doing it. And so, this world is rapidly changing. And so if you're looking for bad actors, you have to align yourself with AI and understand the nuances there, along with safeguarding your organizations as best you can.
We have time for a quick one, maybe.
And Jeff Kaplan, I appreciate the topical panel, and thanks for Jeff, Brett, and the firm for hosting us all. So I'm a rookie, which would be an overstatement on the use of AI. I'm a litigator. We have Grok, we have Chat, we have Claude, you have Harvey. How do you overcome paralysis by analysis with respect to which platform to use, which plugin to use, and for which tasks, such that, like right now, we've got some lawyers and staff who use one platform. Others use a different platform. Some don't use any at all, although I think they would object to the decline of the abacus when the calculator came out. So what did you do? Did you have a formal process to get your arms around which platform to use, which plugin, for which tasks? Or did you allow it to be a bottom-up approach, let your people kind of figure it out and hope that they share the info internally?
Yeah, that's the piecemeal problem that I mentioned earlier. Our process has certainly evolved. And I think I answered that question by saying, if in hindsight, if we're going to do it differently, we would have. But we started with that bottom up. I mean, we had some people that made a case for why they like ChatGPT, some for why they like Claude, and which tools they like to connect to those. We started that way. I would not recommend doing that. What I would recommend really is you as leader, who should have the best idea of how you connect your goals to the usage of AI, you be the one to interview people in the organization across the different departments. You figure out which tool serves the business, which model, first of all, serves the business the best, which application layers on top of that model are the highest value use cases to begin with. You build that centralized operating system that is the model, the toolkit, the skills, the use cases, and the context that people need to pull from that operating system to create the most value. But you have to be in there, hands-on, being the one to really direct that strategy. I think even in our organization, which, as I've said, is lean and low head count, even there, the bottoms-up approach really started to become a mess. I mean, the patchwork approach does not work, in my opinion.
I would add that a lot of leaders don't understand their tech stack, and they don't know the power of their current tech stack. So start there with an assessment. Be very involved in that. We see a lot of clients come and say, well, we need a new technology. It's like, well, you pay a lot for Microsoft. Do you know Microsoft actually does that? And they look at you like a deer in the headlights. No, I had no idea. So look at your tech stack first. And to Jeff's point, then you start building your processes around, but you need to make a call, right? The issue with AI is There's 1,000 different AIs, and just like anything else that your employees bring to you, it's the grass is always greener, right? Somebody's always knows a friend that's doing something different. AI is that, times 100. So make your call based on your tech stack and your business goals. And you know what? You can pivot just like you do in any other business move, maybe a year later, 2 years, if you have to. But you need to get people centralized and using a one or two tools to accomplish the goals, especially in the litigation space. That can be very narrowed, right? Multidiscipline firm, you might be a little challenged, right? Depending on how many different practice areas, because there are some nuances.
So I kind of wanted to bring a more contrarian view or just get your opinion, but there's something about AI that is cold. And you brought up the example of somebody could start a business within 7 days. Perhaps they get chugging along and they can go for 6 months, but there will always be another company or somebody with more resources that can take that idea that they're using AI for and use it for themselves. So do you ever think that there will come a time when maybe a younger generation says, we don't want to do this anymore. We want to follow people who don't use AI, who build businesses with human resources, human ideas, and maybe they kind of throw AI out the window and go back to, trying to be creative and using your intellect and your own brain to build processes, build systems, things that we've been doing for thousands of years without AI, writing and creating. Do you think it'll ever be this will end, not end, obviously, but that there will be a trend that goes away from AI?
I do. Yeah, I think that that trend is even started already. I mean, to your point, AI is cold. There's a lot of inherent skepticism about AI, especially when it comes to things like customer service, customer-facing issues. The best use cases of AI in the consumer services space right now, you wouldn't even know it's AI, that there's AI behind it in any way, shape, or form. I mean, the worst thing for a customer right now is having a problem and you make a call to the company, you get an AI chatbot that's terrible, you say, pass me to a human. It takes 20 minutes to get to a human. So I think that's already certainly in place. And then I think going forward, there will definitely be companies that carve out a niche, being more artisanal, handmade, being the anti-AI version of whatever a popular, AI forward company is today. I think that will certainly happen.
Jeff, I'm going to have you.
Maybe to touch on Jeff, I do think that there will continue to be businesses with much higher human touch, and maybe even to some of the earlier comments, even more important going forward with the next generation, the ability to understand how to use AI maybe behind the scenes, but have much more interpersonal skills and the ability to communicate effectively because of that lost human touch. That's going to be an advantage, I believe. If there's some conspiracy or dystopian ideas that, AI is going to put all of us out of work and we're going to be farming the land again, right? I don't believe that's going to happen. I think inherently people want to build businesses. I mean, certainly there's farmers and those wonderful people, right, that do everything. But inherently there's going to be a group of people that are going to want to build businesses and use technology in order to do that with a human touch, right, moving forward. It's just how do you embed AI, right, versus AI taking over the world. Now, there is interesting companies right now. I don't know if you guys know, there's a couple of companies out there that are being run by agents, and agents are actually hiring humans to do tasks. So you're interfacing with the agent who's paying you to go do a task that the agent can't do. So now you dream a little bit forward and say, okay, well, what can't agents do? Maybe I should be driving businesses in that area, and you find the gaps and you build from there. So,
right, yeah, I guess we've all seen these doom and gloom scenarios, which is like 90% unemployment in 5 years. Right. It's always struck me as unlikely as well.
How are you guys? Thank you for your time today. So a quick question I had was mainly around getting a competitive advantage when it comes to AI, especially since more people start to use AI, more people can copy your ideas in a shorter period of time. How do you find that competitive advantage to where you can build a moat around your idea similar to people were able to before, as well as putting that data governance and privacy in place to be able to protect that moat so that you're not easily washed away in the market?
I think you look at Jeff's organization's success and the way he's championing AI internally for innovation, right? So the organizations that are going to stay ahead of the curve not only are using AI, but have individuals on the team who are accelerating their professional capabilities and innovating around whatever product or service you might be offering. So I think hiring smart or smarter than maybe ever before is going to be crucial to the organization's success. Now, the moat is an interesting question, right? And a lot of people are well down the path of creating before they've built the moat, right? And I'm not a history buff to know how castles are built, but I think while the castle's being built before you move in, there's a moat, right? Before you move everybody into the village. And the reality is that's how you have to be viewing your business. I would even argue that you need to, once you have your business idea, you build the moat, you have your AI governance, your privacy, and you begin to lock all of that in before you start experimenting and building with AI, or you could run into some problems, especially if you have a great idea, right? I mean, today, many great ideas still fail for all hosts of reasons, and this is a key area in AI. If you're not funded the way or not moving as rapidly and your data is out there, you're going to be left in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, the sustainability of moats is obviously a really relevant and topical one for us. I mean, if you're starting as an investor buying businesses, moat and the sustainability of that moat is one of the first things that you spend time analyzing. And, you're spot on that AI is disrupting or eroding moats in many businesses. I think the way we've started to look at it, and probably is at least our internally most intelligent framework for doing that analysis right now, is looking at what is getting commoditized or what will be commoditized and what will remain scarce. And you want to be shopping in that scarcity for how you build a moat. And so to make it very tangible, there's a lot of services businesses that are increasingly becoming very commoditized through the use of AI. But then there's a lot of other services businesses that still require 12 to 24 month certified technicians. AI cannot create a 12 to 24 month government certified technician tomorrow, right? That you just can't do it. As long as that regulation stays in place, and governments don't have a very big history of removing regulations, as long as that regulation stays in place, that is a scarcity that you could have a moat in if you can find, train, and keep those people, right? And so for us, that's kind of how we've started looking at it, is what is getting scarcer by the day and what is getting more commoditized by the day. And we separate the world, basically, the world of businesses, into those two different buckets.
Great. Well, I thought this panel was fantastic, perhaps the best one of the day.
All thanks to the moderator.
Moderator. It starts here. But thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Glory, who had to run for a call.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
For more information on this show and other resources, visit bastamron.com and connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram @Bast Amron.